All right, so we all know hockey's got some pretty iconic nicknames, right? Like you can't talk about nicknames without mentioning the great one.
Absolutely.
But then you've got like
Tanger?
yeah, Tanger. What was that all about?
Some head scratchers out there for sure.
Today we're diving into this roundtable discussion from Hockey News, where their experts are debating the best nicknames in today's NHL.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, and I'm curious, are we like in a golden age of hockey nicknames, or
Are the good ones dying out?
yeah, like are we stuck with Tanger forever?
Well, the experts seem to think we're in a bit of a nickname slump, actually.
Really?
Yeah, Matt Larkin points to all the lazy nicknames we've got now. Like just adding a Y to the end of a name, Maddie or Jonesy. It's just not very creative.
Yeah, it's efficient, but it doesn't really tell you anything about the player, does it?
Exactly.
So Larkin is arguing that we need to get back to those nicknames that really pack a punch,
Like his top pick,
which is
Arbor Kikaj Wifey.
wifey. That is pretty clever.
Right.
It sounds like a password, but it also makes you think of Ekesh. Like,
Yeah. Laying down the law on the ice.
yeah, exactly. He's this enforcer, and his nickname is Wifey. It's kind of funny.
I think it's brilliant. It's like those old school nicknames that could sum up a player in one word.
Like the Hammer.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got Wifey, which is clever and kind of funny.
A throwback.
Yeah, a total throwback. Now, Stephen Ellis went in a different direction.
Oh, yeah. What'd he pick?
He's championing Stinky for Christian Fisher.
Of the Red Wings.
Yeah, and apparently no one knows where it came from.
What do you mean?
It was like an inside joke with the Coyotes, but the story behind it is a total mystery.
So it's like this public secret that everyone knows but no one can explain?
Yeah, it's kind of perfect in a weird way, right?
It's definitely unique.
So we've got clever, we've got mysterious, but what about those nicknames that like reach mythical status? You know, the ones that...
Become a legendary.
Yeah. Paul Paduti picks McJesus for Connor McDavid.
Oh, wow.
That's a bold one.
It is bold.
Do you think it goes too far?
It definitely makes a statement.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't deny McDavid's skill. McJesus really captures that sense of awe that people have for him.
But it does feel a little...
Risky.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder where the line is with nicknames, When does praise become...
Inappropriate.
Yeah, or even disrespectful?
It's interesting how a nickname can be so polarizing.
Especially when it's meant to be a compliment.
Speaking of nicknames with a life of their own, Scott Maxwell brings us Soup, or Superman, for Ilya Mikheyev.
Oh, yeah. The Soup Man.
And this one's got a great backstory, right?
It all started with Mikheyev just casually mentioning how much he loved soup.
And the fans just ran with it.
They sure did. He even got a sponsorship deal with Campbell Soup.
No way.
Yes, it was amazing. Unfortunately, the nickname was kind of put on hold when Jack Campbell joined the Leafs.
So there couldn't be two soups in the same kitchen.
Apparently not.
You'd think they could have worked something out like tomato soup versus chicken noodle or something.
That's a missed opportunity for sure.
But it does show how powerful those fan-driven nicknames can be and how quickly they can...
Appear and disappear.
Yeah, exactly.
Which actually reminds me, Maxwell's other favorite nickname was the Energy Line for that trio in New York.
Matt Martin, Casey Cizikas,
and Cal Clutterbuck.
Yeah.
Energy equals MCC.
Yeah.
Get it?
That's brilliant. But I heard they started calling them the Identity Line instead.
I know. Such a downgrade.
What were they thinking?
Some coaching decisions you just can't explain.
All right, so Anthony DeMarco went with a classic, the Great Eight for Alex Ovechkin.
Simple, powerful.
And it just works,
Especially now that he's chasing Gretzky's record.
Right. It just feels
shameless.
like it was always meant to be.
The Great Eight perfectly captures his dominance and legacy. It's become like synonymous with Ovechkin himself.
And that's what the best nicknames do, right? They become inseparable from the player.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Frank Saravalli threw us a curveball.
Oh.
How so? He's got two really interesting picks. First, Bread or Breadman for Artemi Panarin.
Bread.
I know. It's hilarious.
That is pretty fun.
But it also makes you think about how important bread is in Russian culture.
Oh, yeah. Like it's got this whole other layer of meaning.
Exactly.
Oh. And I bet you Saravalli's other pick is Big Cat Vasilevsky.
You know me too well.
Hard to resist that one.
That's a good one. But his number one pick is actually Brett Chubbs Peterson,
Ooh.
the assistant GM for the Panthers.
Wait, he picked a nickname for a front office guy?
I know, right? And it's a Happy Gilmore reference.
That's amazing. I love it.
It's so unexpected.
Respect that.
It reminds you that hockey can be fun.
Yeah, sometimes we take ourselves too seriously.
Maybe that's what's missing these days, that willingness to just embrace the
absurd.
The absurd. Exactly.
But, looking at all these nicknames together, it makes you realize they're like little time capsules.
How so?
They tell us about the players, the fans, even the culture of the NHL at that moment.
That's such a good point.
So the big question is, what will the nicknames of the future tell us about the game?
Right. Are we going to see a resurgence of creativity?
Will fans keep coming up with the best nicknames?
Or are we doomed to an endless parade of Tanger and Matty clones?
Well, that's the beauty of it. The future of nicknames is as unpredictable as the game itself.
That is true.
And that's what makes this whole deep dive so fascinating.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground already, but there's still so much more to unpack.
Definitely.
So as we head into part 2, I want you to think about this. What makes a great nickname truly great? Is it the cleverness, the backstory, the cultural significance?
Or something else entirely.
We'll be diving deeper into those questions and exploring even more nickname stories in part 2.
Can't wait. As we've been talking about these nicknames, it's really hit me that they're not just these funny labels.
What do you mean?
Well, they're like stories.
Stories.
Yeah, like mini narratives. They give you a glimpse into who the players are.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Like WiFi tells us that Czechaj
Is tough, but also has a sense of humor.
Yeah, it's like he's not afraid to be a little different.
And then you've got Stinky, which is just...
Total mystery.
I know, right? It makes you wonder about all the other great nicknames that are probably hidden out there.
Just waiting to be discovered.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like a whole secret world of hockey nicknames.
It really is.
And you have those nicknames that are just legendary, Like McJesus.
Or the Great Eight.
Yeah. They reflect the level of skill that's just...
out of this world.
Yeah.
They become almost like mythical figures.
like their nicknames become part of their legacy.
Exactly. Like Johnny Hockey.
Oh, yeah. That was a good one.
It perfectly captured Gaudreau's style, the joy he brought to the game.
Too bad we lost him so soon.
I know. But the nickname will live on.
It's amazing how a nickname can do that.
But then you have those nicknames that are just pure fun, like Soup.
And Breadman.
Yeah. They remind us that hockey doesn't always have to be so serious.
It's entertainment after all.
Right?
You mentioned earlier that nicknames are like time capsules. Do you think the lack of good nicknames these days says something about the NHL today?
That's a good question.
Like maybe it's because players are so worried about their image now.
Yeah, and there's so much media scrutiny.
It's like everything has to be so polished and perfect.
There's not much room for spontaneity anymore.
Which is kind of sad because that's where the best nicknames come from.
I agree. But, even in this era of Tanger and Jonesy, we still see some gems pop up.
Like wifey.
Exactly.
So what do you think makes a truly great nickname?
Well, I think first and foremost, it has to be memorable.
Like you hear it once and you never forget it.
Right.
It's got to stick with you.
Yeah. And it has to capture something essential about the player.
Like their style of play.
Or their personality.
Or even a funny story.
Yeah. Like Soup from Mikheyev.
That's a good example.
It just works.
So memorable and descriptive.
And finally, I think a great nickname has a certain timelessness to it.
Like it transcends different eras.
Exactly. Like The Great One or Mr. Hockey.
Yeah. Those will always be associated with those players.
No matter what.
It's like they become titles.
That's a good way to put it.
So out of all the nicknames we've talked about, which one stands out to you the most?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
I know, right? There are so many good ones.
But I think I have to go with Stinky.
Really?
Yeah. I just love the mystery of it.
It's like this unsolved puzzle.
And it shows that hockey still has this element of folklore and unpredictability.
It's like we're all waiting for the story behind it to finally be revealed.
That would be amazing.
It would be.
You know what else I love about nicknames?
What's that?
They can really spark conversations and debates among fans.
Oh, yeah.
Like I was at a game the other day and overheard these fans arguing about whether McJesus was appropriate.
Right.
It was pretty intense.
But that's what makes it so fun, right? It's like these nicknames become part of the fabric of the sport.
Exactly. They bring people together.
So what do you think the future holds for NHL nicknames? Will we see a comeback of those really clever ones?
It's hard to say.
Or are we stuck with Tanger forever?
Well, you never know what's going to catch on,
True.
The next great nickname could come from anywhere.
Like a rookie's amazing skill or...
A funny interview?
Or even a fan sign in the crowd.
That would be awesome.
It's like we're all on the lookout for the next Soup or wifey.
Always searching for those hidden gems.
All right, so before we wrap up part 2, I have a question for you.
Okay.
And for everyone listening, if you could create a nickname for yourself, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a good one. I need to think about that.
Me too.
How about we reveal our answers in part 3?
Sounds like a plan. Stay tuned, folks. This deep dive is far from over. We'll be back in a flash with more nickname talk and our own personal monikers. All right, so before we went on that break, we were trying to come up with our own nickname.
Yeah, that was a tough one.
It's harder than it looks.
It really is. You have to sum up your whole personality in like one word or phrase.
It's like writing your hockey card bio.
Exactly.
So did you come up with anything?
I think so. I'm going with the archivist.
The archivist.
Yeah, it kind of fits that. I love history and
And you've got all those old hockey programs and stuff.
maybe a few too many.
That's a perfect fit.
What about you? Did you come up with anything?
Yeah, I'm going with the rink whisperer.
The Rink Whisperer.
What do you think?
I like it. It's got a nice ring to it.
Well, I do like to think of myself as a bit of a hockey detective.
Uncovering all the secrets.
Exactly. But enough about us. Let's get back to those player nicknames.
It's amazing how many different types of nicknames there are.
We've got everything from the clever to the just plain weird.
And they all tell a story.
They really do.
Yeah.
What are some of the trends you're seeing with nicknames these days?
Well, we've talked about how those classic nicknames seem to be fading away.
Like the boom booms and chicken parms.
Yeah, those were the days.
Do you think it's because younger players just aren't into those kinds of nicknames anymore?
Maybe. Or maybe it's because of how the media portrays players now.
Like everything has to be so controlled.
Yeah, there's not much room for those organic moments that create those great nicknames.
So are we saying that spontaneity's dead?
Well, not necessarily. I think we're seeing new trends emerge, like those fan-driven nicknames.
Like Soup and Breadman.
Exactly. Fans have more power than ever to shape a player's identity.
It's like a new form of storytelling.
That's a great way to put it.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you want our listeners to remember about nicknames?
That they're more than just names. They're a reflection of the game itself.
What do you mean?
Well, they tell us about the players, the
Yeah.
fans, the culture of hockey.
So they're like these little windows into the soul of the sport.
Exact.
So the next time you hear a nickname, don't just brush it off.
Think about where it came from, what it means.
It might just surprise you.
It might just tell you a story.
Well said. Nicknames really do add something special to the game.
They make it more fun, more interesting.
So keep your ears open, folks. You never know when the next Wi-Fi or Stinky will come along.
And maybe you'll even be inspired to come up with some nicknames of your own.
That's all the time we have for this deep dive.
But the conversation doesn't have to end here.
Keep exploring those nicknames and keep loving the game.
We'll see you next time.